Today, in the case of the people versus Deftones, I'm going to tell you if Deftones are slop or not. How are we going to do that? First, we're going to go over what is slop. Second, how to detect it. Third, how much of their catalog is slop or otherwise. Fourth, if they're talented regardless. And then finally, fifth, we're going to figure out if you and other people are going to consider them slop or not, and if so, why. So without further ado, what is slop? Look here, the music matrix, energy from 0 to 11, catchiness and or how memorable a song is from 0 to 10. Okay, so if a song is greater than a 7 catchy, and when it's low energy and catchy, it gets called pop, and when it's higher energy and it's catchy, it gets called rock. If it's not that catchy, like if it's less than a 7 out of 10 catchy, it just gets called garbage and slop, and people say it's bad. Now, you might go, well, actually, it's shoe grunge, blah, 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 and no one else cares. And so they're just going to call it bad. You might have some technical word for it, but they call it bad. Now, energy from 0 to 4, this is music that makes you wind down for that. 0 to 3, at least, makes you wind down, sleepy, nap time, relaxing. You're getting a massage. You're trying to, have a soothing evening. 4 to 7 is making you dance, making you groove, getting on the dance floor, having fun, good energy level, more upbeat, right? Grocery store music, right? And then, unless your grocery store sucks, then go to a new grocery store. Go to H-E-B in Austin. Anyways, now, anything from like 7 to 11, this is really where it's super high adrenaline, makes you want to fight, like boxing, do crazy stuff, sprinting, right? And so that's really easy to detect the energy level, but the catchiness, that's a little bit harder to detect. So what is slop? It's less than a 7 catchiness. Things that are not at least a 7 out of 10 catchy get considered slop by people. Now, if we're going to be well behaved, I swear to God, don't move on me. You're not going to move on me. But we've got the second chart here is going to let us figure out how to detect slop. What is slop? So we said we know what slop is. Do not move. Do not fall. I will kick you. I will kick you, inanimate object. Okay. So there's a lot of things that go into catchiness. It's not just one thing, but the thing that lets us have the, biggest catch-all is predictability. So how, on average or in general, predictable or unpredictable a song is can tell us some good stuff right off the bat, bang for the buck. So if something's completely predictable in every single way, it's going to be corny and it's going to be slop guaranteed. If something's completely incoherent in every single way, the words are gibberish, the song goes on forever, it goes nowhere, it's completely incoherent, the structure's awful, nothing repeats, none of it's even good to begin with. It's going to be incoherent, it's going to be slop. If it's somewhere between being balanced and zany, it's in the money zone here. And now it still has maybe like a 1/3 chance of being a total piece of garbage slop, but it also has a 1/3 chance of being something that's for fans of that band or fans of that genre, right? It could be a deep cut. But it also now has like a 1/3 chance of being something that's actually catchy to like everyone. Like on the radio, people aren't going to skip it immediately, right? And so you're not guaranteed that you're going to have a hit if you're in the money spot, in the money zone. But now you actually have a chance of getting up here versus here you're guaranteed slop. So now that we have that as a good kind of baseline, we can really get into the meat of Deftones. I'm going to tell you off the bat, Deftones are going to be a very controversial band. They're going to be a very controversial band, and you're going to be wondering, Connor, why are Deftones so controversial? Because everyone I know thinks they're awesome, or everyone I know thinks they're horrible. And there's pretty much no in between. That's why it's going to be controversial. So let's dig into, we know what slop is less than 7 out of 10 catchy. We know, 2, how to detect slop, right? Kind of predictability gives us a good gauge for where it is going to be. And then 3rd, we're going to how much of the catalog is slop. This is not about how much in total. This is about the ratio of every song they put out. If you had to listen to each song and go, this is undeniably catchy, well, then it goes in the hit bucket. If you listen to the song and go, this isn't undeniably catchy, some people are going to skip it on the radio. Anyone who's not a fan of the genre or the band, they'll skip it. It's not going to be their thing. But I like it as a fan. Okay, then it's going to go into the middle bucket. And then if it's just, this is not good, fans are skipping this, everyone doesn't like this, then it's total slop, right? And so I think with Deftones, for me, when I'm doing that and putting that into the buckets, it goes straight to a less than 50-50, like David Bowie or Pearl Jam. Well, I just can't even stand Pearl Jam, but I'm going to go through it anyways. And I won't be surprised because to me, it's probably just not catchy pop music. Anyways, But there's guitars there. It's got to be rock music. No, it doesn't. But anyways, David Bowie has a really low ratio of good quality. I've had people argue this a million times, and I put up all the numbers in the comments. You don't need to argue it. You're just going to embarrass yourself. Now, here, Limp Bizkit. I love Limp Bizkit, but they have a less than 50-50 catalog, which is why there's a lot of controversy when I say I love Limp Bizkit and they're really good. I also love David Bowie, and I think David Bowie's really good. But he has a lot of music that's not, that he put out on records. A lot. More relative to the amount of music he put out that was really undeniably good. Most of it is not good, right? And so likewise, I think Deftones for me fits here. Some people might say it might be a little in between, right? Deftones for them, maybe it's more of a flat distribution. So I think it's going to be in between a less than 50-50 and a 50-50. 50-50, great example, might be someone like Led Zeppelin. Let's say they have 3 albums worth of just like, these are like some of the greatest, like these are incredible songs. 3 albums worth of stuff where the fans are like, I love this. But I understand that most people are going to like skip it on the radio, but I love it. Come on. And there's 3 albums worth of stuff where the fans go like, okay, this is not good. This is bad. Skip it. Right. And so I think because Deftones doesn't have a horribly consistent quality catalog, that's where you start to see some problems arise. A good example of where that doesn't happen might be something like Metallica. Rage Against the Machine is a really good example. Rage Against the Machine, Daft Punk, their albums are all good. They're all good. The quality. The genre might be different in terms of intensity level because that's what, kind of makes the genre for the listener. Maybe not for music nerds on the internet, but for people who actually listen to music and who are just subconsciously responding to things, it's the intensity level and the catchiness and the quality of the execution. So, without further ado, we already sense there might be some problems with Deftones in terms of if people are going to agree on whether they are good or whether they are awful. Now, let's really get into the meat of it. The brand of Deftones is strong. It's very strong. This means if Kim Kardashian saw it on a t-shirt going into Walmart, which she wouldn't be at, but even if she did, she would be like, oh, I love Deftones. That's a really good fashion brand. I love their fashion. Those people who just care about t-shirts and all and lunchboxes, whatever, they're going to say Deftones is good because it's in. Deftones is so fetch. It's in. It's in the cultural, it's in right now, so to speak. Musicianship, this is prior to, I'm just gonna cut to the chase. This whole musicianship thing it's hard to, kind of say what I'm trying to say here, but really it's either virtuosity. It's something where when people who play an instrument hear that band or hear that riff or hear that song go, oh, I need to pick up that instrument. I need to learn that riff. And the problem is Deftones has one. They have and the rest of their catalog doesn't sound like that. That's the problem. You see the problem there, right? So they kind of like did that, but for one song. And then you're like, well, they have other riffs. The other ones are like these shoegazy things where it's not even the riff, it's more the pedals. And so then it's like the thing you're being inspired to do is maybe get into like soundscape design, which I guess kind of like maybe so for those people who are really into soundscape design or whatever, they're going to be like, Deftones inspired me to do it, and I get really excited when I hear it, and so I think they're good because of that. Most people, I'm going to say, though, outside of, if you said that one riff doesn't exist, shove it, if that riff didn't exist, there's like name 10 Deftones riffs. I don't know. Name 10 Metallica riffs. Enter Sandman, Creeping Death, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Seek and Destroy, anything off a Megadeth record, because all the riffs are written by Dave Mustaine. Anyways, even on Metallica records. No, I'm kidding. But like, it's just like riff, iconic riff. Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that much out of sound. Deftones don't have it. Deftones don't have that. Think like Van Halen, like I'm got it bad. I'm up for teacher. That's like That's someone who consistently has those riffs. Like Rage Against the Machine consistently has riffs that inspire you to pick up the instrument. Tool if you're a bassist, Primus if you're a bassist, right? Polyphia if you're a guitarist, right? Those are things that make you want to pick up the instrument. I really don't think Deftones has that outside of one song. So I gotta give them like a yellow red, because like that's not like, if we're going in the whole shoegaze thing, because here's the thing, maybe I'll put it this way. If you're a pop music enjoyer and you like atmospheric songs that have no riffs, no energy, they're not catchy, and they go nowhere, then sure, for you it's inspiring. But this is the crux of the problem. Let's just skip to it. Songwriting. Deftones can't write music. Or maybe they could have. They had a spurt where they could have with the album with the girl in the bikini on it, and they started to be like, oh, maybe I can't. Even the first record, which sounds like a worse version of Limp Bizkit's first record, $3 bills, y'all. Like, literally, they just Deftones doesn't write music. This is their problem. They come up with really pretty sounds, cool, like TikTok sound bites. Same with Radiohead. You'll hear a Radiohead soundbite on TikTok and be like, oh, that sounds pretty awesome. And then you'll go listen to the song and you'll be like, they're just doing the soundbite over and over. And this is the problem with the predictability thing, because at first it might seem unique and interesting, so it's more onto the unpredictable side. But then they do it over and over and over, and repetition legitimizes. This is a phrase from Adam Neely, who makes very great videos and brings in a lot of sociology. I mean, not sociology, but I guess somehow. But everything's interconnected if you're talking sociology, right? It impacts everything, right? All evolutionary psychology technically would be downstream of sociology. So, and most of the things we like and we don't like is due to evolutionary, selected things, yada, yada, yada. But basically, Adam Neely brings in a lot of psychology and this idea of, if you take a riff or a really cool sound, a really cool TikTok soundbite, a snapshot, like a 5-second thing that's really badass, that's really unique and memorable, but then you repeat it over and over, it kind of launches back on the predictability and slowly steps its way to being extremely boring and uninteresting and corny. Hence why there's bands who have less interesting riffs that are just like AC/DC is a great example. They have the same 2 chords or 3 chords, it's just A, D, power chord. Every song is A, D, E, maybe G. Back in Black is that, right? It's the same scale. Everything's an E or it's an A. Like, it's the same exact stuff every time. It's the opposite in terms of TikTok soundbite when it comes to where Deftones and Radiohead excel. Except AC/DC understands that, okay, though our thing there's less actual goodness and uniqueness to this riff, we can only play it once or twice without having to change it up. Then we have to change it up, and then we have to put a lot of different stuff in between, and then go back to it, and then we can use it for just another 5 seconds, then we got to skip to the next thing. You can't just sit on it. And so though Radioheads and Deftones find these things that you can sit on for a while, it's like, well, maybe you can sit on it for 20 seconds, but now you got to move on. You got to move on, or else it doesn't matter how much how much more relative to normal riffs, how cool that soundbite is. You can't just loop the soundbite forever, right? Think of "Kiss by a Rose" by Seal. Oh, baby, I compare you to a kiss by a rose on the grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. And now that your love is a rose, the light is the moon on the grave. I've been kissed by a rose on the grave. There's so many moments, so many riffs, so many of those good Radiohead TikTok sound bites that you could listen to forever. But you can't actually listen to them forever, because then they suck and the song sucks and you skip it. That's the problem. That's where you have something that could be better than every other band. If you took AC/DC and their discipline to understanding repetition legitimizes, we can't abuse our riffs over and over. We can't abuse the efficacy on the listener. It's like a drug. A riff is literally like a drug, right? You get the hit of the drug. This is what happens to drug addicts, right? They do the drug, and then they need more next time, and then more, and then more, and then more. And within 4 or 5 weeks, the original amount, or especially with 3-4 years, if they're still alive, the drug user is not going to they're not going to get any benefit from what would have been 10 times the original dose, even, maybe whatever the number, it depends on the drug, but that whole concept, right? And so if you abuse the the efficacy of a riff on the audience, it loses the efficacy, and you lose the trust of the audience forever. There's a reason, like a lot of these bands, I'm like, oh, I've never checked out Deftones, but I heard one cool song. Let me go check them out. And then they suck. And then the songwriting's bad. They have cool sounds, cool moments. Radiohead, everyone told me Radiohead, they either told me Radiohead's awesome or they told me Radiohead's awful. Same with the movie Blade Runner. It's the exact same thing. Blade Runner has a really pretty aesthetic, and the movie goes nowhere. It does nothing. It's boring. It's like the only things that are interesting is the look, the sound, the like TikTokification, the screenshot, the wallpaper. That's what Radiohead and Deftones do. They make interesting wallpapers. It's the sonic equivalent of a wallpaper. They don't write songs. I write sins, not tragedies. Panic at the Disco. No, but that's the whole thing is with these bands, they just make wallpapers. Blade Runner is just a wallpaper. There's nothing more than that. A movie that's a great example of the opposite is The Batman by Matt Reeves. That has a very distinct wallpaper, iconic aesthetic, and it has a plot that's really incredible and great and fun. And he uses the fact that he can come up with these things that have increased efficacy on the audience, and he stretches them just to the point where they're still effective. He doesn't repeat it so much that it becomes slop. He keeps it in the money zone, and then he continues to build, and he continues to actually have good foundations and a good skeleton, which is called songwriting and or, in the case of making a film, is your scripting. It's just the script. It's just, I'm trying to think of the word for it, but it's literally just like, did you write it? Is it good? The South Park guys, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, would always say, whenever you have the bullet points of the plot of the episode, in between each one, when you're explaining it, you should say, thing A happened, therefore thing B happened. Or it should be, thing A happened, but thing B happened. Therefore, they did C. It's like that. There needs to be but and therefore. You can't just say A happened and A happened again and A happened again and B happened and A happened again. Especially if B, C, D, and even A aren't that good to begin with. That's the problem you get into when you don't have a script, you don't have flow, you don't have causality. That's the thing, right? And so you need to change parts to have causality, and it can't be random. And if something's random the first time, here's what you could have. You could have Brendan Sanderson is a great fiction writer, and he makes the same exact point. He says it differently. He says, when you're writing a story, you shouldn't go, and a thing happens, and a thing happens, and a thing happens. That's the entire order. Like, he's like, maybe you can throw in one, and a thing happens. One random moment, one random thing that's like, what the heck was that? That didn't fall. It wasn't a but. It wasn't a therefore because of the thing before it. It just happened. But you can throw in like maybe one, right? And then when later in the song, you can throw that thing back in again. And now people go, oh, it happened because it happened earlier. The first time was random and weird, and I didn't like it. But because it happened again, like because it happened earlier, it happened again. It's a callback. It's a reference to the beginning of the song. A little treat saying, hey, we threw that thing in and you didn't like it probably, or maybe it caught you off guard, but it was worth it because we were setting up this thing. So now we've shown you, like, there's all of this stuff going on at play when you're writing songs, you're writing movies, you're writing jokes, stand-up comedy. There's, they say economy of words, right? If you have a joke and the joke, like the distance between the setup of the joke and the punchline to the joke, if it's a really short thing and it takes a person 2 seconds to figure out what your punchline is going to be, then either you need to pick a punchline that's even farther away, and before, if it's 2 seconds from the setup of the joke to the punchline, to the closest punchline, and the second closest is here, punchline 1, punchline 2. If it takes a minute or 4 seconds for someone to come up with this one, and 8 seconds for someone to figure out the second alternate punchline, it doesn't even have to be even funnier, the second punchline. But if you set up the joke and at 3 seconds you say the second punchline, or after 5 seconds of saying this setup, you say the second punchline before they could even get to it in their head. They go, oh my God. But if your setup takes so many words that they get the first part of the setup, a second in, and then by the time you're done saying the entire setup of the joke and you pause, it's been 8 seconds already. None of those punchlines are going to work. And it's not because those punchlines don't work. It's because how long it took you to say the thing, how much time it had to mellow and sit and metastasize in the brain and rot and to get covered in fungus and to rust the idea in their brain or the soundbite or the wallpaper, all of that stuff. If that sits there for too long, it ruminates, right? If you repeat it too much, and or if you let it sit there for too long without changing it, right? That's kind of where you get this whole idea of things become it's bad. It's bad. It becomes bad. It's so simple. It doesn't work. When I say bad, I mean the thing ceases to operate. It ceases to affect the target audience to an outcome you would desire, right? It ceases to go from, I say the joke this way with this 5-word, very efficient, very economical, high economy of words, but really I say it in very little words. I get the setup for the joke, and then I'm able to effectively say the punchline before people are able to put 2 and 2 together. It gets them to laugh, and they go, wow, I like this guy. This guy was funny. Versus if I don't do that, and it takes me, I don't have good economy of words, I use way too many words, more words than the joke is even funny enough for, to the point where everyone's thought of every punchline by the time I'm even done setting up the joke. Then, when I say that joke that way, the same joke, but I say the premise in such a long-winded way, and I let it metastasize, then the joke will not work. The intended, I'm defining work, when the audience hears this joke, they are not going to laugh, they're going to groan, they're going to, Therefore, you can say, it does not work. It is ineffective, it is bad. The audience is going to consider that bad and or slop and or not good. Versus, even if they're offended by the joke, but the economy of words is good, they have to, if they're being honest, say, that works. I don't think it works for moral reasons or my taste or something, they could say, perhaps. But if they're just saying, does that joke make an audience laugh? Boom. You can just do it in front of multiple audiences multiple times, right? And this experiment has happened with these bands like Deftones and Radiohead, where prior to this era, they got plenty of radio play. You go on, friggin' Sirius XM Turbo right now, you're going to hear Deftones songs. You were going to for the last 20, 30 years. And still, all of the hard rock and older people in their 40s, 50s, and 30s, this is not that good. It's just not that good. And Radiohead, the only people who ever said different were hipsters who wrote blogs and millennials, right? And so that seeped into, because Anthony Fantano is who these Gen Z people with no opinion started watching and listening to, right? There's this whole sound bitification of everything, right? When it comes to different art forms, and it's this, this is artsy. It happens with movies. All the A24 movies, they look pretty. They don't make sense. They're not reconnecting. Shoot. Reconnecting. What does reconnecting mean? Well, anyways, it says reconnecting. If I cut this right here, 24 minutes, I'll remember that, 23. No, but there's the sound bitification, and so Deftones is a big example of that. Once we get to the TikTok era, what happened is there is a 6-minute is all people are hearing, and they go, wow, that's cool. And then so many people did that without ever checking the whole song, which is what would make it no longer cool because they heard it over and over. But they hear the 30-second or the 5-second thing one time, and they go, wow, that's really cool. And then once they've said that, they tell all their friends, and they send it to all their friends, and everyone makes videos with it, and it's trending audio, and then boom, 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 boom. Before you know it, everyone goes, wow, this band's awesome. And no one's listened to more than 5 seconds, except a couple people with no critical thinking skills. And even then it becomes in. It's in. It has the strong brand. It has the momentum of that. And so then when people go and check it out, they're like, what's in right now? Like, I don't want to say it's awful or whatever. This is what happens to a lot of pop music and pop artists. This is why they fall off. It's because the momentum ran out because their music was bad. And no one wanted to say it up front, or not a lot of people like me did, but people who are just normal people on these platforms don't want to say, hey, I'm hearing about this thing. Everyone loves them right now. They're trending. I go listen to it and it's garbage. People don't want to say, hey, I disagree with everyone. I'm high on disagreeability. That's not something. You go back to evolution. If you disagree with everyone in the tribe on every single thing, they're probably going to kill you or leave you. Or, if you're annoying, right? All these things, right? People don't want to be annoying. I don't have a problem being annoying. I care more about what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's not true, because I think it's more important for people to actually be able to rely on and to figure that out, because then they can figure out, okay, I'm making music, or I feel a certain way when I hear a certain album. Why or why not? Now, after explaining why Deftones are not able to write songs and why they were not successful, yes, they were successful enough in the prior eras. Yes. But at the level of people who will listen to this regardless of the quality, meaning people who are fans of that style or genre and will just listen to anything of that style or genre because they're grateful for it. I will give you a great example. Lots of hair metal from the 80s has really bad mixing, and some of the bands couldn't write good albums, but they had really good guitar players. And so people still love those albums, but they're not good albums. Not all, I'm saying specific. There are ones in there, and that's a genre maybe people have a more clear view of. I think people don't, in general, people who have ever listened to hair metal go, oh, this is really good. A lot of it has bad mixing. But outside of that, anyways. Whole point, Deftones, not good songwriters, but we didn't get to overall. A broken clock is still right twice a day. So, with that said, are Deftones slop, rock, and or pop? What are Deftones? Are they bad? Are they good? Really? So most people go, when I think of the band, where do I in general put them on this chart? What songs do I remember? The ones I liked. Okay, well, in general, how do I rank the songs I remember? That's what people are doing, not consciously, but just when they go, where are they? Are they rock? Are they not rock, right? So let's look here. Here are my top 10 Deftones songs, and then here is the average catchiness and energy. So, Shove It, Shove It, Shove It, My Own Summer, Changes, Be Quiet and Drive. You can see they have a couple songs, right? But you can see very quickly it gets to like 4, 5, 5, 6. These are all 4 of 10, 40%, just off your head, 40% of their top 10 songs. I dug hard to try and find good stuff in terms of songwriting, not moments or a good part that then becomes unbearable. I mean, good overall songs. 4 out of 10 of the top. The top song skews further in catchiness, you know what I mean, than the average of all of the music. They have such a low quality of songwriting in general. It's like almost everything is probably in the 4 to 0 range for the most part. 98% of their catalog is in the 4 to 0 range. They have a lot of records, and I went through all of them, and this is what I could scrap together. They don't write songs. There you go. There's the verdict. But I could still, because some of these songs were so good, the ones where they did get lucky, or maybe they had a producer in the room who, convinced them, hey, let's just do this. And because they apparently can't hear what's a good song and a bad song, they just said, sounds as good as I think everything sounds. And then they got some good songs on these records where maybe the label really wanted to make money back. Right? And so, yeah, like first record, second record, third record, or whatever. The one with, White Pony. So it's just like, literally, you can see, like, there's reason the quality is all located to a certain area. And that might not be first, second, third record. I think it might be, I don't even want to do. I don't want to think about the albums because they weren't good. Anyways, 7 in terms of catchiness on average, 6.9 in terms of energy. You can see less than 50% catalog. Controversy is high because their musicianship is not virtuoso inspiring. Their songwriting is abysmal, but their brand is strong. So the fashionistas and the performative males on TikTok and IRL are going to say they're incredible. Anyone with an ear is going to say it's awful, or they're going to be deluded by the fact that they heard a good soundbite. So overall, where did that put them? About a 7 and a 7. When you look at Deftones, it gets you on the higher end of the punk energy range, and right here. So Deftones are, in fact, they're probably going to be called rock and or kind of alternative something. Or a lot of people who, because here's the thing, here's the problem. To find these songs with the 7 and the 6 and the 5 and the 5 and the 4 instead of 5 songs with 3 or 2 in terms of quality of writing took a while. Anyone who's listening to just the radio or is going through and like listening to like best of, they're not going to get that quality. I had to dig more time than I would have liked to listening to friggin' Deftones. And so I went through, and so if you're talking the average person, what are they going to think? Well, their internal average, mine is skewed. I'm being favorable. I'm being nice. I will consider Deftones a rock band because I like to see the best in people. And to me, I like higher energy and catchier songwriting. If Michael Jackson had, extreme high intensity like Slipknot, but also the same catchiness of Michael Jackson, I would say I like that better than Michael Jackson. And I would like that better than Slipknot. So I see the best in people, and what I define as best tends to be catchier and higher energy. Now, with that said, I barely consider them a rock band, and not just bad. Barely. Most people who are not, if you took someone from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and you played them all of the Deftones music, or maybe like top 40 songs, they're gonna be like, boom, it's something in here, it's not good. Unless they're a fan of the genre, then they're gonna be like, actually, because it's over a 4 and it's in the fan zone, the friggin' fan area, I'm gonna say it's a metal punk indie shoegaze, and it's like this really specific thing, and you wouldn't know, and it's really important. But to everyone else, it's just gonna be garbage. But we have, it's in the culture right now. And because all the people hear is a soundbite, then their perception is the whole soundbite. So this really breaks down into, normally it's, what are people going to consider this band? Slop or not? And it really should be more specific than that. What are people going to consider this band if they've listened to them? What are they going to consider this band if they've only heard soundbites? And they're trying to autofill from their brain, not them actually like consciously going, I should autofill. Their brain. If their brain's autofilling based off of very limited data that makes you infer, this might actually be really awesome, then you're going to think they're great. But the people who've actually listened to it are going to say, they have 3 songs, maybe. And even then, it's like, just put on Tool. It's going to be better. Put on Limp Bizkit. Put on Limp Bizkit. Literally. You shouldn't be getting bodied by Limp Bizkit. And I love Limp Bizkit, but you should not be getting absolutely demolished. That's cultural impact. Limp Bizkit's also got it. Virtuoso musicianship. Limp Bizkit has that on top. Songwriting. Limp Bizkit has better songwriting. Catalog consistency. They both have the exact same bad quality. But Limp Bizkit has more good songs. You're just like, you shouldn't be getting strictly dominated. This is in what do they call game theory? They say when something is better and or the same in every single category, it strictly dominates things that it's better than in every single attribute. If it's better, if you're being strictly dominated by Limp Bizkit, you probably have a problem. There's not one thing you have that you do better than Limp Bizkit. Literally. That's the crux of it. So there's my thoughts on Radiohead, Blade Runner, Deftones, this whole epidemic of friggin' soundbite things, these wallpaper bands. Anyways, and then people go out and they start their own band and it's wallpaper. That's what shoegaze has always been. Go look at Blur. Go look at bands. Go look at what Graham Coxon did. Any of these guys who used a ton of pedals and had cool, interesting sounds, they actually wrote music with it. Actually write music with the pedals. You make cool sound so you can put it into beautiful painting of cool sounds or moving painting of cool images with words and idea and emotion. Oh my God. That's what you do as a musician. So if you're not a musician, you're just a fan, now you won't sound like an idiot when you're talking about it, and you'll be able to clock. If I'm talking to someone who just has seen the wallpaper, okay, don't actually understand that they're not talking off of having listened to it and actually knowing. They're talking off of what they imagine it must be like based off of these 5 seconds, because that 5 seconds was cool. The whole thing must be cool. They don't realize that's the only thing there is. That 5 seconds, and it stops being cool after 50 seconds of the same 5-second loop. So, hopefully you understand where your thoughts are. I don't know, whatever. What band do you want to see next? Like, subscribe, comment. You stayed. It's been like 30-something minutes. You're awesome. You're handsome. You're beautiful if you're a Latina. And yeah, I'll see. I don't know. I'll see you in the next video. Let me know what you want. I gotta use the restroom.